listening to the Love Unplugged podcast, episode 2. Today's episode is all about balancing the demands of entrepreneur life, a social life, and a relationship. Whether you are an entrepreneur or are working in corporate 9 to 5, we all know the amount of work and stress that we can come under. This can definitely have a toll on your overall health and your relationships, including the one you have with yourself. Let's learn how our guest today balances it all while maintaining a positive mindset. You are listening to Love Unplugged, a podcast focused on love in all its forms. I'm your host, Jessica Frigon, hopeful romantic and founder of Revue Blanc. I've found that too often love is set aside or taken for granted, and we tend to forget how to care for ourselves and our relationships in the day-to-day chaos. So let's slow down, tune in, and begin our journey of rediscovering love. From honest heart-to-heart conversations with real couples and knowledgeable guests, to deep dive reviews of new products and services that will help you feel beautiful inside and out. If you're looking for relatable advice or wanting to be inspired by real-life love stories, you've come to the right place. Without further ado, let's get to it. Well, hello everybody. I am here with Danielle Connor, graphic designer and a successful entrepreneur, but so much more. So we're going to learn all about how she balances owning a business, having a social life, a relationship, how she fits in self-care, and ultimately how she does it all while being an utter ray of sunshine. So first time that I met you, the first thing that really took me by surprise, Danielle, was just how positive you are and just so upbeat, and it's just so contagious. So have you always had this amazing outlook?
Yeah, first of all, hi everybody. Thanks for having me, Jessica. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's not to say life isn't always a ray of sunshine. You know, we all have our ups and downs, but I think, life's short. So, I mean, why not have a positive outlook and look at the glass half full? And I think a lot of the times we're told, oh, don't be too excited, or, don't show your excitement so much. And I don't know, I just think screw it. Life's about having fun and being excited, and it makes you feel good. You're happy. We just booked we're about to book a trip to Europe, and I'm so excited, and I want to share and just revel in that happiness. And I think that we all could use a little bit more of that. And so why not channel that whenever we can?
So where are you going to Europe?
We are going to Croatia, Albania, a little bit of northern Greece, Bosnia, southern Italy, and then I'm doing a week in Paris.
Oh, that sounds exciting.
Oh, I'm so excited, yeah.
You're doing the girls' trip in Paris at the end, right?
Yeah, with my mother-in-law, so
Is the boyfriend going back home after that?
Yeah, he's going to spend a few days with his family, and then he's going back home, so. Yep, too bad for him.
So let's get back to that whole positive energy that you have. Did you learn that from your family? Where did you pick that type of attitude up from?
Yeah, I think I've always just been a very bubbly, happy personality. Ever since I was a little girl, I was always that little girl with pink and girly and having fun. And yeah, I guess just smiling and laughing. And I think also in the last few years, as I've sort of gotten more comfortable in my own skin and kind of grown up a bit, I think I've not been afraid to channel that energy a lot and really be who I am and not apologize for it, and and have fun. Why not? And I think I just got an Instagram message yesterday that said that my energy was so contagious. I just thought that was so sweet, and it just made me smile, and I'm glad that I can kind of bring a little bit of light and sunshine to other people's day and encourage them to be a little bit happier and more excited about the things in their life.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that sees all this.
I'm glad you're not too, because sometimes I'm on Instagram stories and I'm is this too much? I'm well, no, it's how excited I am.
Hey, if it makes you happy, that's great, and you're sharing it with everybody, so that's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you ever experience any challenges that made you kind of have to put in a little more effort into looking on the bright side, and how did you go about doing that?
Totally. I'm the kind of person that I always run 500,000 miles an hour, and I'm always doing something. Today is a perfect example. I booked a few too many things back to back and was kind of running around like a chicken with my head cut off in between. But that led me to some pretty serious burnout last year. I dealt with some pretty serious stomach issues that stemmed from anxiety and yeah, it just ended up being a lot, and I think it was just because I was running on adrenaline and fumes for so long that it really just caught up to me, and that was tough. And I think that was a time in my life where I really couldn't, it was hard. Like, I feel like if we're going through a hard time, the last thing you want to do is show up on social media and, you know, be happy-go-lucky, and it feels fake. So I think those are the times where we kind of want to hide, and then we share after the fact, which is fine. Like, I went to see a therapist last year, which was really helpful. And she was saying, like, it takes a certain amount of, like, vulnerability to share. So you have to be, like, sure, you're still vulnerable, but you're, like, less vulnerable after the fact and after you've sort of been through the thick of it. And then when you're able to share, it's just wild how much support and encouragement you get around you, and how many people have also been through similar things, and that it's okay to go through that and to have periods of stress and anxiety, and that we all experience that. And if we can support one another and, like, encourage one another, and again, like, it's okay not to be happy and excited every single day. Like, that's not realistic, right? You know, the reason, you know, I get so excited about my trip is because most days aren't as exciting, and most days are, you know, quieter days spent at my computer, or, like, a little bit stressed out, and that's okay too. And it's trying to find that balance between the two, I think, and know that, like, it's okay, and life's gonna ebb and flow. And I'm such a believer that, like, life happens in seasons. So some seasons you're up and some seasons you're down, and what can you learn from those seasons and take with you?
That's awesome. I think that's so great that you actually went to see a therapist. A lot of people kind of think, like, if there's something really wrong with you if you go and see a therapist, and they don't really understand the value of it. But it's just so healing, and it's so nice to be able to talk to someone who's completely unbiased and who's just there to listen, and not to tell you what to do, but to help you figure that out on your own.
I could not agree more. And I was pretty open about it. Like, I think therapy can be this kind of taboo thing, and there's no reason why it needs to be. I think that, like, we all need help sometimes, and just somebody to talk to that, like you said, is totally objective and can help you see things for yourself, or kind of frame things in a way that you didn't think about. And I'm such a believer in, like, building your team of professionals. And I kind of shared this last year. Like, I had a therapist, I had a nutritionist, I went to see a naturopath, a massage therapist, acupuncturist, and so, like, all these different things that all played different roles and helped me in a different way, and they all contributed, right? Like, going to see my nutritionist was amazing, especially with my anxiety and stomach issues. That was a huge thing that then helped me not feel so sick all the time, and then I wasn't as anxious all the time because I wasn't feeling so bad, and everything plays a role, and it's just looking at wellness and your health very wholeheartedly.
Have you always been into wellness, or was this something that just kind of came about because you were experiencing what you did last year?
Yeah, I've always been into wellness and health. My dad is a pretty big health junkie. And I mean, when I was younger, not maybe as much, because as you are the teenager, you don't really care. And then when you're going kind of through university, I was still living at home from the beginning, but he would cook really healthy meals, which was fine and great. And then once I moved out, I've always eaten really healthy, which was kind of one of the reasons why last year's, like, stomach and anxiety issues were so frustrating, because I am a really healthy person, and I eat healthy, and I exercise, and I do all the quote-unquote right things. So then to have to deal with that was really frustrating, and having to pinpoint, like, where that was coming from. And it was totally coming from stress and doing too much, and just 100% burnt myself out.
It impacts your health so much when you are so anxious and stressed out and overwhelmed, and people don't realize the impact that emotions actually have on your body and your overall well-being, right? So it's super important that you actually got to the root of the cause, and you weren't just looking at it from a different perspective, like, oh, it's just my food that I'm eating.
Yeah, I think that was a really eye-opener of how much my well-being is impacted by, like, I know stress impacts your health and well-being, like, of course, we all know that, but until you really feel it, and I could see, like, okay, the days that I'm more stressed or anxious, I would spend the entire day feeling so nauseous, like extreme nausea, and seeing a nutritionist was really helpful, because that was something that I could control, and I'm very much, like, I love to be in control of things around me, and so having something like food that I could really control and be like, okay, like, when I'm feeling anxious or when I know I'm going to have a tough week, this is what I need to eat and fill my diet with, and then being able to kind of plan around that and know that, like, okay, this one aspect of sort of, like, stress and anxiety I can control, and it can have an impact on me, a positive one.
It's crazy how it always impacts your gut. Like, the core of the issue is coming from your gut, and it affects, like, so many different components of your body.
Totally.
It's just insane because it's the same thing for me, like being overwhelmed and stressed out and having anxiety and just burning myself out. My gut is completely off, but it impacts everything else.
Oh, for sure. And I think it's really important to like realize like how all of that affects your body, because I know some people, their energy is totally drained, or they have headaches, or they get migraines, or they get full-on panic attacks. Or so tuning into your body and really being aware, like even now when I sort of have an anxious day, I can start feeling a little twinges in my stomach, and I'm like, okay, and I can kind of pause and stop and just kind of examine like where I'm at and, be really in tune and aware.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you meditate?
Yeah, actually, I love my yoga practice. Like I will practice yoga a few times a week. I'm actually doing a 30-day challenge coming up, which I'm excited about. But I try to meditate for a few minutes every morning. And it's usually no more than 5 minutes. I put on one of my like yoga, quote unquote, songs. And I just sit there and I say either a few things that I'm grateful for, or I recently had a friend suggest saying a few things that you're proud of yourself for, which I really like because I so struggle with that. And I'm sure most of us busy entrepreneurs, we're just kind of like powering on to the next thing. So to stop and be like, oh, this is something that I'm like really proud of myself for, and it's an exciting thing that happened, is really cool to just acknowledge that. And then I'll say what my intentions are for the day, but like saying it backwards. So I kind of like recite my day as if it has already happened. So like I woke up, I exercised, I meditated, I sat down and was super productive and got X, Y, Z done. And then I had a great lunch. And so kind of like planning out your day and picturing like what it's going to look like as if you were looking back on it, which is really cool.
I like that.
Sometimes I'll do that for my week. Like if I'm meditating on a Monday, I can kind of like envision what my week will look like and just like put out that intention into the universe. And yeah, and I just find those like few minutes. I'm not sitting for 10, 20, 30 minutes. Like I just can't, I don't have time. It is literally enough to like take a few deep breaths, calm myself down, and feel like I'm starting my day with intention. And I definitely notice a difference when I do it versus when I don't. Full disclosure, I didn't today, and I feel like I've been just like running around all morning. Even if I have a busy day, the days that I take a few minutes and just kind of relax and set that intention and take a few deep breaths to kind of calm my body and just settle into the day makes a big difference.
That's so true.
Yeah.
I just started getting into the whole meditation. I was reading this book. I think it's Stress Less, Accomplish More or something like that by something Fletcher. I keep forgetting her name. So good. I mean, the first part of the book, I think maybe skip. I like just to get to the point.
Yeah.
Right? But I definitely, I liked towards the ending of the book where she actually goes into the whole meditation and how that all works and all that stuff and what you need to do, just because I never really had a good understanding of like how to actually meditate.
Yeah.
I feel like I can't shut my brain off to actually sit there for the length of time that I thought you needed to do it for. But really, it's like 5 minutes a day. And she says to do it at least 2 times a day for up to 15 minutes. And she kind of walks you through like how to get into the meditation, and then at the end kind of focusing on manifestation and whatnot, which I really liked, which gets into a whole other like series of books that we can go down the road on. Are you into books? Like, do you read a lot?
It's just
You're pulling up your list?
I'm like pulling up my list because I totally agree with meditation. Like, it doesn't have to be this big thing. Literally, like you can sit down. You don't have to have like a meditation cushion or something fancy. Like, it's just sitting down and just having a few moments of quiet, especially like we were talking about this earlier. We're all so busy today, and any kind of like pause and stop during the day, like even like I took the dogs out for a walk earlier, you can smell the cherry blossoms because they're blooming, and it smelled so nice. And I just stopped and I took a few moments to take a few like deep breaths and close my eyes, and I was just present and I enjoyed it because why not? Like we're all racing through life. So I've been trying to be really intentional lately, and I just finished reading this book, back to your books. It's called Rest, and it's by Alex Soo-Jung Kim Pang, and the foreword is by Arianna Huffington. It is so good. It's a little bit like different from your usual kind of like entrepreneurial books in the sense that it's a little bit more like scientific in that he quotes a whole bunch of like famous historical figures. Not quotes, but he pulls from their life and like uses them all as examples, which I think is really cool because it goes through all of these different ways that we need to incorporate more deliberate rest into our life, whether that's through vacations or sabbaticals or having your day broken up into chunks. Like the first few hours in the morning, all of these successful figures worked really hard for the first few hours in the morning and then had more leisurely afternoons. Like they would go for walks or take naps. And so he goes through all of these different elements of rest and argues that all of these people were super successful, like crazy successful people throughout history, like Isaac Newton or people that ran countries. And they did this and they were still successful and managed to get all this done. So why now today do we have this crazy idea that we need to be working 12 plus hour days to get things done and be successful when actually the opposite is true? Like, we need to be way more intentional and structure our days in a way that we can have rest and we don't burn ourselves out.
It's so true.
Yeah.
I got this book, you know, Mimi and Alex Icon. I think they started the company Intelligent Change. I don't know how they're connected, but I think it is their company. And they have that gratitude journal, and then they have one productivity planner.
Oh,
so I got the productivity planner, which is actually really good. Showed my boss it as well, and he's just like, this is amazing.
Yeah.
Right? And it is for like a planner for each day, and it like also does like an overall for the week type thing. But it makes you focus on like your top priority, your one task for the day. And then you're like next 2 less priority tasks, and then your next 3, and that's it. Type thing. Like, stop making these huge ass lists that I tend to do that are like
so
seriously
guilty.
3 pages long
Every day.
And then you look at your list and you're like, crap.
You're like,
it's not going to happen. And then I get overwhelmed, and then I'm like, I'm done.
I like a serial to-do list writer. And for me, it does keep me sane. Like, I
need a list.
I need a list. If I always joke that if it's not on the list, it doesn't get done. But I've been really trying, and I have a few friends who are like, Danielle, like, stop putting so many things on your list. Like, you know, what are your top 3, or pick a few things? Because I have this habit where I'm like, okay, like, these are the things I need to get done. But here are 10 more things that I can probably get done if I really put my mind to it. And like, if I have the extra time. And then at the end of the day, obviously, I have not gotten all those 10 things done. And you feel like you got nothing done, even though that's not true. You actually had a pretty productive day.
Yeah.
So
you just didn't get through your whole list.
Yeah. So that's a good one. I've been trying to do that.
All right. Well, that's good. We're on the same page.
Yeah. I can encourage one another. Yes. Accountability buddies.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. So being an entrepreneur, requiring activity on social media, so you need to be on there for your business. A lot of your work requires social media.
Yeah.
So this is something that you kind of helped me with, but how do you sidestep that whole comparison game that people often get down into?
Yeah, it can definitely be hard. And I find like, even not so much like the comparison game, but just like the like scrolling in like down the rabbit hole, and then it's not even that I feel bad and I'm comparing myself. It's like an energy drain. And so I feel I've been trying lately, and it's not, you know, a lot of the times this is easier said than done, but being like, and I've heard this a lot, being intentional when you are going on social media. And so like going on it, being like, I'm going to go on, I'm going to post, or I'm going to interact with 10 people that follow me, or, you know, go and comment on a few people's stories, or just be really intentional about that. I had a friend who, instead of like blocking out time that she couldn't be on social media, she scheduled time into her day where she could. So she had like 1 hour in the morning and 1 hour in the afternoon. And then she would like delete Instagram off her phone from like 8 p.m. to 8 a.m. So that was a little bit excessive. I started like I tried it the other day where I logged out and then I put Instagram like in a folder, like in a few pages in, so I couldn't see it. Because it's true, like I'm so used to picking up my phone, and I'm sure we all do this. We know exactly where Instagram is on your phone. You tap it without even thinking. I'm like, I didn't need to go to Instagram. I wanted to like call somebody. I'm like, why am I in Instagram? And that's been helpful, and just even for like a day not logging off and being off it. Something that I have been pretty consistent with is like not looking at it first thing in the morning, because I find that makes a big difference.
Sets
like,
the tone for your day.
Yeah, exactly. And so like not looking at it first thing in the morning, and then not looking at it the last hour before bed. Like no phone, I'll just read, kind of wind down for bed, and then in the morning I'll wake up, I'll exercise, have some breakfast, meditate, and then I'm like, okay, now I can kind of like check on Instagram and see what's going on, because I feel you just start your day more centered. And I know we all feel this like anxiety or like tightness in our chest, or that it's kind of like that jittery feeling where you're like, oh my god, like why am I feeling like this, and like my day hasn't even started yet. And I find that sometimes will happen from Instagram, because you like are tapping through stories, like how quickly can you go through the stories or the photos, and you get jittery and anxious and like this weird energy.
So for those listening,
there's a few puppies in the background.
This is why she's so happy. She has puppy love all the time, and they are adorable, but it's going to come. Is she going to bark? You can see it in her face. She wants her toy.
So you hear little pitter-patter or barks in the background. That's what it is.
We'll definitely take pictures so you guys see what's going on here. So yeah, scrolling through Instagram, you kind of, as soon as you start, if you don't have the intention to like stick to whatever your goal is for that time that you're on social media, you're definitely going to get sucked in for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Like I find that, and I'm like, nope, I'm going on to do this and that's it. I'm posting and I'm leaving unless somebody actually messages me or comments on my post or something.
Yeah, exactly. That makes a difference.
Yeah, definitely. So owning a business is a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. Just getting into the blogging world almost 2 years ago now in April.
Congratulations.
Yes.
Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. I did not realize how much work is involved. And you're actually like taking on client work, which is even more work than actually just running a business. That's insane. So let's kind of talk a little bit more about that. So Did you start in the corporate world and then you kind of started with a side hustle and then made the decision to transition? Like how did that come about?
So I did my undergrad. It was a Bachelor in Communication Design at Emily Carr here in Vancouver. And I've always juggled like so many things at once. From like high school, I had a part-time job and I did cheerleading a few times a week and was in school and then did the same thing in university. And then at one point had 2 jobs, cheerleading and school, like university. And I ended up with mono for 2 weeks in bed. So another experience of burnout that kind of like reined me in. So after that, I quit one of my jobs. I had to leave cheerleading and I was working as an intern at this mining company actually, doing graphic design work. And then I was so excited to be done school and get to work full time. And when I finished school, I'd been working for a few months at this mining company. And I kind of realized that the corporate world wasn't for me. I very much love the like fluidity of having my own schedule and just being in charge of it and working in that corporate environment. We're also like, all my coworkers were much older than me. It was just not for me. I did meet my boyfriend there and I actually worked for my mother-in-law who also worked there. So I do not regret those 5 years that I was there.
Of course not.
By any means. It's why I am where I am today. But I realized that it wasn't for me. So I started setting up my business as a side hustle. I actually went to a few local female entrepreneur networking events and I quickly realized that those were the kind of women and people I wanted to be surrounded by. And the energy I got after being around these inspiring women, I'm like, this is who I want to surround myself with in my life and be working next to and cheering them on. And so I started my business as a little side hustle. I had my first client who kind of took a chance on me, Megan from Vancouver Fashion Truck. And I did her branding and her truck design and it was so much fun. I would say my first dream client where I, throughout the project, was like, yes, this is exactly the kind of work I want to be doing, the kind of client I want to be working with. I just felt so excited and energized and seeing it all come together at the end was amazing. And now like she's launched it, I think, oh my gosh, maybe 2 years ago too. Seeing her business grow and being able to have been cheering her on for these last 2 years has been so cool. And so after working with her, I was like, okay, like how can I make this my full-time business? And I sort of started building my side hustle and getting clients on the side and juggling full-time corporate job with that side hustle. So working all day, every day, evenings, weekends, you name it. And yeah, and then eventually it came time where I couldn't keep doing both at once. So I ended up leaving my corporate job, which was sure like a scary jump, but it was so worth it. And I honestly haven't looked back since. And I dove in headfirst to run my own business, and I've gotten to work with amazing female entrepreneurs since, and it's just been, a lot of us go into it thinking like, oh, we're going to work less or like have more flexible hours, etc. That wasn't necessarily the case for the first while. I dove from one job straight into continuing to work all day, every day, but just solely on my business, which was fine. I think like as entrepreneurs, especially if you're just starting out, you have to experience those extremes. I think, don't get me wrong, it's not good to burn out and like try to find that balance and try to have some rest and but understand that like it's going to be hard work at the beginning and you have to put in the hustle at the beginning, and that's okay. And like then you kind of figure out your balance and you're not working every evening and weekend. Maybe you can take a day off. Maybe you don't work evenings because you enjoy dinner with your significant other. Now I finally feel like I'm at a place where I'm really trying to make that a priority and like really trying to stick to some good working hours and work-life balance. Even though actually that rest book that I was talking about, he says that term is like backwards because like the two should go hand in hand. Like you can't have one without the other. So like you need to rest to be able to work, and vice versa. And we look at them as these like two opposites on the spectrum, which we shouldn't, which I agree with. So yeah, I'm trying to be more deliberate with my rest in my life right now.
That's good.
Yeah.
So how do you do that? How do you take time for yourself running a business and trying to balance that with a relationship? Like, how do you get out and do something for you?
You have to make the time. And I always say oh, like when I have time, or I'll try to find time. You're not going to find time. You have to make the time. So like I have to like commit to a friend that I'm going to go to a yoga class with her, or like tell my dad, and like, you know, he'll hold me accountable and be there, and or like plan with girlfriends, like, okay, we're going to go for lunch or something. And then it kind of helps having somebody else to hold you accountable.
Mm-hmm.
But even if it's yourself, like you have to treat that time as like you would any other kind of client meeting or business thing. It's important, and if you don't do it, you're going to burn yourself out, you're going to be exhausted, and you're not even going to be able to be productive and good at your job and in your business if you're just running on fumes. Like, it's just not doable. Mm-hmm. So you have to make the time, and I think not feel guilty about it too, because I think that was something I really struggled with coming from the corporate world, is that like you feel guilty for taking like a Monday afternoon off, even though there's no reason why you should be. Like, if you get your work done, what does it matter, right? Like,
exactly.
If you get your work done for your clients, as long as you're there, responding to emails, communicating clearly, running your business successfully, like, it's up to you how you structure your day, right? Like, some people like to work into late at night and sleep in the morning. I'm not one of those people. I'm like such an early bird.
Yes.
But yeah, like, there's no reason why I should feel guilty. Like, I'm going skiing on Monday and I'm taking the day off, and like, that's fine. It's sometimes, again, like, I don't say I'm like perfect at this, but it took a while to like not feel guilty about it.
I think it's different, like when you're so used to like a corporate type structure where you go into the office and you're working from like 8 to 4:30 or whatever hours you're working, and then you kind of go to being so flexible and kind of owning your own schedule and determining when you're going to work and when you're going to take time for yourself. And I think that transition kind of really has a huge impact on people, because they do feel guilty. They're like, crap, you know, this is when I'm used to working.
Yeah.
And this is supposed to be Monday to Friday or whatever that they've been working. And now it's all changed. It's all up in the air.
Totally. And I found having that schedule is really helpful. Like, I like having a schedule, and I don't find that restrictive.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you have to be a bit flexible, and like maybe some days you're not, you know, having the best day, and so some days you're not going to be as productive. But yeah, like my boyfriend still works a 9 to 5, so like when he leaves in the morning, I'll get up, exercise, shower, blah, 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 sit down on my computer, and like having that structure during the day is really helpful, and knowing like, okay, like, yeah, come roughly sometime in between 4 and 6, you know, it's time to call it a day. Like, sometimes I'll go to a yoga class at 4:30, sometimes I'll work till 5:30. I find like having that kind of a little bit of a set structure can help, especially when sometimes, like, as an entrepreneur, you're right, you could work any day, anytime, whenever you want.
Exactly. So let's talk about your personal life.
Yeah.
I think we've covered lots about business. So we all know that you have a boyfriend, and you met him at work.
Mm-hmm.
And funnily, your boss was his mom, which adds a whole level of complexity there.
Oh, yeah.
So how did you guys kind of get together? Like, how did this happen? And how did the mom feel about this?
Yeah, it went, I love telling the story. I just think it's so funny now looking back. We were the 2 youngest employees at this company, and like we both started out as summer interns, and then they liked us, so they, you know, we did a good job, so they kept us. And I got hired as a summer intern working for his mom, because like they hire summer interns of parents working there, so my mom also works there, like in a different department, but it's a whole family affair.
It's a big family event there.
And so I got hired to report to her, and I don't remember this, but apparently both of our moms say this, that they both told us individually, like, you can't date the other person. Like, you can't date Danielle, you can't date Guido. I do not remember this, so clearly I just like mentally did not, like, in one ear out the other. But I did not have the intention, like, for me, my job was so much more important at that time that I was not looking for a relationship. And so we would flirt and have fun, but like, I was like, no, like, we can't date. Like, my job is so important to me. What happens if we end up breaking up? And like, I don't want to lose this job. Right now, that's number one. And then it was kind of through like Christmas and New Year's, and then we spent like a Christmas party together, which we actually had our first kiss at, very drunkenly. And I
at the Christmas party?
After
okay. I'm like, with your mother's there.
No. We went out after, and then made out. Like, a couple of us went to like a club after. And I remember, this is a funny story, I remember waking up the next morning being like, oh my God, I'm going to be fired. He's going to tell his mom that we made out, and he's going to fire me, because that's what every 24-year-old guy does, is he runs home to tell his mom we kissed the night before. But in my head, that made perfect sense. So I remember walking into work Monday morning and being like, that's it, I'm done. And like every hour that went by being like, I still have a job. Okay.
She hasn't called me in yet.
I'm still here. And of course, like, now everybody kills themselves laughing because they're like, you're such an idiot. Like, who thinks that? But it made total sense to me that morning. So after that, I was like, no, like, we can't. And then I guess we had one conversation at one point where I told him that, like, persistence, like, if he was persistent, it would pay off. So he was, and then we, like, finally both kind of caved and went on a date, and then kind of the rest is history. Like, we were so good at keeping it a secret for a while. Like, I didn't tell my own mom until like a month after we started dating, and we were really good at the office. Like, you know, we would the first kind of times, like, I would spend the night and then I would leave his place, go to my place, my mom would drive me, and then I would like see him again. Like, we were just so good at keeping it a secret for so long. Definitely, though, there was, like, a few awkward moments because we both still lived at home. And so his mom would spend the night at her boyfriend's house and then come back. And I would be leaving. Like, there were some mornings where we would cross paths. So I would be, like, coming out of Guido's bedroom, like, to go back home to then go back to work. And would be like, morning. Only then to then walk in the office and say, like, good morning again as if I hadn't already seen her.
All right.
So, but now, like, it's so funny, and honestly, like, I wouldn't have had it any other way because I had the chance to, like, build this, like, incredible relationship with my mother-in-law, who's, like, now my, like, second mom. Like, we got to travel together for work, and it's just, like, yeah, and I truly feel so grateful, and, like, Guido and I, obviously, thankfully, it worked out. Here we are 6 years later. And so, yeah, and it was funny because we used to flirt, like, and be, like, you know, so, like, coy with each other, like, at the beginning, and then, like, as it went on, it was, like, less and less because we, like, saw more of each other outside work, so we could, like, care less about each other at work. Like, it was fine. And then there were some people who didn't find out until, like, at least a year after we started dating that we, like, moved in together. And, yeah, so we were pretty good about it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I give you major props for keeping it secret.
But,
that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a fun story. I love it.
It's unique.
Totally.
It's awesome. I think it's great. Especially with the fact that you get along really well with the in-laws, which is such a big deal. It's not something that happens all the time.
I know. I'm so grateful. And I hear some pretty horror stories sometimes about, like, in-laws. And I hope Guido feels the same way about my parents. Like, he gets along really well with them. But, yeah, it's nice to, like, have a close, tight-knit family.
I mean, how could anybody not get along with you anyways, right? Like, come on.
My parents. No, but yeah, you're so sweet.
So how do you go about making sure that you guys actually get quality time together, given that he's still working his corporate business, you're running your own business, and it's a lot of work, also fitting in social time for each other?
It's not easy. It's not. And so up until, like, 6 months ago, maybe, one of us had always been in school while we were dating. So when we first started dating, I was still doing my undergrad. Then Guido started doing his CFA. Anybody who's in the finance world will know what that is. It's a pretty intense 3-year self-paced program where you study, like, it's basically like being in school. Yeah. And then when he finished that, he did his MBA for 2.5 years, which was part-time, but it was every third weekend, Friday night, Saturday, all day Sunday, like all weekend. And then, of course, they're studying in between. So up until he graduated last May, that had been, like, the first part of our lives together, which was really hard. And so that was kind of like the norm. And so we've always had to sort of, like, make time. And I feel like now that we do have some more time together, you would think it would, like, get easier. But I feel like it's still, like, anybody who's in a relationship that, like, everybody works, you know, and especially when you live together, you come home at the end of the day, you're tired, you just kind of make dinner together. It's just so easy to fall into the couch, watch TV, go to bed, like, you're kind of reading.
Not talk.
Barely talk. Like, and then on the weekends, you're kind of relaxing, like, catching up. Like, sure, you do something fun, maybe with some friends or something. But, like, I feel like we really need to be intentional. And, like, this is something I've been really trying to do recently in our relationship, is, like, setting aside that quality time together. And Guido's very much like, I'm sure tons of other guys out there, that he's like, well, we see each other all the time. Like, we saw each other last night. I'm like, sitting beside each other on the couch watching Netflix is not quality time together. Like, I
mean, it's nice, but you need to have that, like, intimacy.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
Not the physical always, but the emotional, like, and the mental intimacy.
That connection, and, like, even sitting down together and, like, having dinner together. Like, I think we got into such a habit when we were in school that, like, we're so tired, and, like, he was in school, I was running my own business, that it was just, like, way too easy to do that. So, like, now I'm trying to be like, okay, like, let's sit down and have dinner together. And even if that's, like, our only little time that we, like, connect during the day. And I think it's mindset, too, because sometimes I think, like, oh, the quality time has to be, like, specially plan like dates, but like we have Canucks tickets. So last night we were at the Canucks game and like framing it like that's still a date night. Like that's us going out together and, you know, getting out of the house and spending time together and like cherishing that time that you do have together and really making the most of the time that you do have.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have like rules like no phones, like kind of just like turn off all the electronics and just have a conversation, or is it just kind of like let's just
It's
be
kind
together?
of just like let's be together. And not to throw my beloved under the bus, but he like if I say something to him, I'm like, honey, you're on your phone all the time. He's like, so are you. And so we like clearly probably both need to work on it. Although we are like, if we're talking to each other, nobody's gonna whip out their phone while like we're having an actual conversation. And if we'll sit down for dinner or if we're at the next game. But if we pull out our phone during intermission because like we just had a 20-minute conversation, like we don't need to spend the entire time like staring lovingly into each other's eyes. Like there's, you know,
There's gotta be a balance
it's
there.
gotta be a balance. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I definitely find vacations are nice because that kind of like forces you to be off your phone because you are like in a new environment, or like if we're camping or, you know, on holiday, you're just kind of like naturally not on your phone, which I can really enjoy.
That's
Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips or advice for those trying to balance being an entrepreneur and having a relationship? So I might be a little selfish here,
No.
but I'm sure that there's other people out there that have a burning desire to kind of know how to balance it all. So
For sure. It's not easy, and like by all means, like give yourself grace and like know that like I was saying earlier, like life happens in seasons and that's okay. And there's going to be seasons where you guys are super busy and, you know, may not even get like a weekly date night, and that's okay. And like to like be okay with that. But I think like coming back to like making time for things, because honestly, if you don't make time for it, it's not going to happen. Like last weekend we were both tired and relaxing, and like the weekend before I had been sick and the weekend before he had been sick. And so I'm like, okay, like let's take Charlie, who's our dog, to the park, and we'll walk over to the bakery and we'll just walk along the water there. And we like made the time for it, because otherwise the weekend would have passed us by, and it's so easy. Like you're just relaxing, lounging around, and like we all need that. We all need our like relaxing days. But if you don't make the time to spend time with your significant other, I just find like the time goes by and you don't, right? So making the time and like, you know, setting aside, if that works for you, like the same date night every week, you know, like on Saturday afternoons we do something together. I know a lot of couples that do that. Cherishing the time that you do have together, and like not having these crazy high expectations that like a date night only counts if it's this, and like it only counts if we go to a fancy restaurant and then come home and spend all night like together. And like, no, like, you know, every little thing counts. And some days you are going to have to work into the evening, and, you know, some days Guido has to work in the evening too. But being like, okay, like at the end of the day, like I, you know, turn my computer off and I go and see Guido and ask how his day was, and, you know, be very intentional about, because yeah, like sure, there's still a difference even if we're sitting together watching Netflix versus like if he's watching it by himself and I'm working all night, right? Like you're still like snuggling on the couch and relaxing. And so, yeah, just like making that a priority. And I think like I'm a big fan of Power Sheets, which are this like intentional goal planner by Lara Casey, and it's about cultivating what matters. And so like you have to cultivate what matters little by little in your life, and none of this is going to happen overnight, but like one date night a week or eating dinner together twice a week, like those are some of the things that I've put on like my monthly kind of tending list for my monthly and weekly goals. Yeah, just making it a priority and cultivating what matters ultimately. Like if that's important to you, making it a priority.
I think people forget that, you know, at the end, really all that's truly important is the relationships you have. Yeah. It's not about the work. It's not about the money. It's not about like all this other stuff that people think are so important. It's really about the relationships at the end, and that's what you should be focusing on.
I literally could not agree more and have said that word for word to other people. And like, that doesn't mean we don't love our job any less, or that doesn't mean we don't enjoy it or value our clients, or no, like of course, like that doesn't mean any of that. But it's about the relationships. And at the end of the day, like Lara Casey says this too, like what do you want your life to look like when you're 80? And I'm like, I want to be surrounded by my family and friends and have those relationships. And like that's what you're going to remember. Like you're not going to remember the long, tired days that you spent sitting at your computer. You're going to remember the day trips. Like last summer I went with a girlfriend and we picked raspberries in the afternoon or in the summer, or we took a girls trip to Bowen Island for the day. Like that's what I remember from last summer, not the deadlines and the work and the hours I spent on my computer. Like those are the memories that I'm going to have for like forever, basically.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I totally agree with that. And I think it's important to say that, like, again, like that doesn't mean we don't love what we do and don't love our job and don't appreciate it and all of those good things. But sometimes I think we can like focus so much on that we like lose sight of what is like truly at the end of the day important. Like that when you're, old and gray, what are you going to remember?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, this was a wonderful chat.
Yeah, I had so much fun.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being my first guest. It's been lovely getting to know you better. So thank you so much. It's been great. And I hope everybody's enjoyed this little chat as well as hearing these little puppies running around. They are truly adorable. So thank you for allowing me to come into your home and spend some time with you and the puppies.
Thank you. We loved having you.
I'm Jessica, and thanks for tuning in today to Love Unplugged, the podcast. If there are any questions or topics you'd love answered on the show, head on over to revueblanc.com and share your request with me. If you haven't yet, go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and share it with a loved one. Your feedback means the world to me, and the community we've created is what fuels our discussions here. After all, this is all for you. Join me next time for another Unplugged conversation.